Howdy, I'm John Gray, and welcome to Tales of the Wild West. The year was 1895, and the little town of Singletree, Montana, was celebrating its silver jubilee. Now, everyone within 20 miles of this little mining and cattle town would put their work aside today, get all dutied up, and head off to town just to cut that badger loose. Now, they had plenty of food and drink. They had a Pharaoh's tent, a medicine show, a big parade, and Sam and Gracie, local favorites, would perform. But the highlight of the day was a baseball game between a bunch of miners and ranch hands and a barnstorming professional team called themselves the Excelsior Aces. Now, no one in this town ever thought that a bunch of locals could compete with a professional team, but at the end of this day, winning and losing had nothing to do with baseball. For it would be published in newspapers as far as Baltimore that this was the day the Aces got trumped.
In the late 1860s, Singletree, Montana, was little more than a few tents and a cabin or two around Hiram Prouse mine. The town got its name when Hiram's wagon broke a Singletree, forcing him to stop his westward journey in search of a new life. He took it as a sign and he staked his claim, and it wasn't long before other miners arrived, and by 1870, several permanent buildings had sprouted and the boom town, appropriately named Singletree, was born. Unlike most boom towns, Singletree flourished. The mines proved profitable, and it wasn't long before nearby ranchers found supplies and diversions in the little town. Within a year or so, Singletree boasted more than a saloon and an assay office. There soon was a livery, a general store, mortuary, boarding house, even a church and a school, and it helped take Singletree from boomtown to metropolis with culture and manners. Its status was cemented with the construction of a train station and the printing of the first issue of the Singletree Enterprise. News from back east was always popular, but nothing seemed as exciting for young and old alike as the sport of baseball.
In the western territory of Montana, cowboys were playing baseball as early as the year 1876. Baseball has been a staple of American culture since before the Civil War. Gene Autry even owned a baseball team. But did we ever see Roy Rogers hit a baseball? I wonder what it would have been like to see characters on shows like Bonanza run around a baseball diamond. I know it would have been strange to Hoss Cartwright and Little Joe. You tell me.
In the summer of 1895, Singletree celebrated its 25th anniversary with a baseball game pitting a local team against a team of barnstorming professionals, the Excelsior Aces. While Singletree did not have an organized team, several area folks had played the game, and a couple had even seen the American Association's St. Louis Browns play in Sportsman's Park. The Excelsior Aces, however, were true professional ball players. True, most weren't not quite good enough to play in the American Association or the National League. Those that were usually had other, larger problems. Now, Crazy Joe Silver King, what a psycho he was. Ty Cobb called him the dirtiest player he'd ever seen. Once he ran from the field and into the crowd to beat up a handicapped heckler. Now, Crazy Joe, he ended up in Sing Sing prison for involuntary manslaughter. Seems he killed a restaurant cook in a brawl over an undercooked steak. Joe was very particular about his meat. And Moses Foster, he was smart as a whip, strong as an ox, a college graduate, and he could hit the ball a mile. He had quite a temper, though. Now, you see, to avoid racial incidents, especially in the southern states, promoters called him the Cuban. He was just one of many early great black ball players that just couldn't cross baseball's unwritten color line. Now, Peach Pie O'Connor, he was the best hitter on the team, but he loved his food. Now, he was superstitious to a fault. He ate 2 plates of taters before every game. But in the summer of 1891, he injured himself badly sliding into second base with his eating utensils still in his back pocket. Most of the barnstormers were skilled enough for a career in the minor leagues, but rather than put up with rules and regulations and rigorous training schedules, they, as barnstormers, they could see different towns and different saloons and different women several times a week, and with little practice and even less attention to clean living, they could still easily win their games against unorganized town teams. This day, however, was to be just a bit different. The citizens of Singletree were so proud of their little town that nothing stood in the way of preparing for their Silver Jubilee. The July morning was cool, promising perfect weather. For miles around, miners, ranchers, merchants, craftsmen, cowhands, they came knowing that for a few hours at least they could set their troubles aside and cut loose. And after filling their bellies with bean stew and homemade biscuits, fritters, and of course a few nips of corn whiskey, it was time for the pre-game show. Now, just before the game commenced, Singletree took the field to show off a bit itself. Several of the local town folk had dusted off their horns and drums, and they treated everyone to an original march composed just for the occasion. Then onto the field marched Singletree's 2 most popular citizens, Sam and Gracie. Everyone in the territory knew a little Samantha Ewan, who 5 years before lost her grandfather during a bank robbery, and there's the first citizen of Singletree herself, Gracie, Sam's grandfather's mule that had foiled the holdup that fateful day. They indeed both were the pride of Singletree. Crazy Joe Silver King, he got a bit distracted by all this, and seems most towns they visited wouldn't or couldn't put on such a show. But it wasn't just a show. Crazy Joe hated mules. It seemed he was kicked in the head more than once by such an animal when he was a child. Now, when the Aces took the field to warm up, the townsfolk crowded the third base line to see these marvelous athletes move with power and grace. Their black and red uniforms set them apart from the local players who wouldn't have had any way of identifying themselves were it not for the generous efforts of a local seamstress who made them all hats. The Aces business manager, Pepper Dean, was friends with mine owner and Singletree mayor, Wesley Rickey. After some negotiations, they agreed without the knowledge of the Aces players to stage today's event using the rules that were in place in the 1860s, you see, when Singletree was founded. So among other things, no gloves and no overhand pitching, and perhaps most important, a fly ball caught on one bounce was an out. This did not go over well with Crazy Joe Silver King or his players, but they wanted their paycheck at the end of the day, so the game commenced.
The team of professionals didn't like playing under the rules in the 1860s. The ball that was used in the 1890s is basically the same ball as today. The ball that was used in the 1860s is a larger ball, it's a much softer ball, did not travel as far, and therefore the guys that were playing in the 1890s didn't like using it. They didn't like a lot of the rules from the 1860s.
To everyone's surprise, the hometown team, while still being behind the Aces, they was putting up a real fight. This was not going to be the route the Aces were used to. So when the hothead team captain, Crazy Joe Silver King, stepped up to the line to face Singletree's pitcher, Cy McCall, he had blood in his eye. Now, hugging the third base line was the first citizen, Gracie, who sensed the striker's anger and knew just what to do to rattle. Now, baseball's a funny game. Momentum can change in the blink of an eye. And on that fine afternoon with Crazy Joe Silver King at bat, it did. The town couldn't believe their eyes. Cy McCall left the pitcher's line, and little Sam Ewing took matters into her own hands.
My great-grandfather worked for the C.A. Carter Ranch in Singletree, Montana. And it happened on that day that he was on his way into town to pick up Maggie Carter's daughter, Kate. And, of course, we know all what he observed is because Granddad kept a detailed journal. And this is actually what he wrote about that day. As we drew closer to the field, It was apparent that what had started out as a friendly contest had become a no-holds-barred free-for-all. I was ashamed for young Catherine on the day of her homecoming to witness such a display of human behavior at its basis. Whether the terrain had afforded me another route to the Carter Ranch.
When the dust settled in that little hollow near Singletree, Montana, the most prevalent injury was a bruised ego. Even though the Excelsior Aces had more runs on the board when the frenzy erupted, everyone in Singletree knew this was the day the Aces got trumped. Now join us next time for more tales of the Wild West.
Take Me Out to the Ball Game, sung by Edward Meeker, Edison Record. Katie Casey was baseball mad, had the fever and had it bad, just to root for the hometown crew every Sue. Katie Blue. On a Saturday, her young beau called to see if she'd like to go to see a show, but Miss Kate said no. I'll tell you what you can do. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and cracker jack. I don't care if I never get back. Let me root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game. Katie Casey saw all the games, knew the players by their first names, told the umpire he was wrong all along, good and strong. When the score was just 2-2, Katie Casey knew what to do. Just to cheer up the boys she knew, she made the gang sing this song. Take me out to the ball game, take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and cracker jack. I don't care if I never get back. Let me root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball.